Hey, what's up? Todd here, and today I want to talk to you about one of the biggest ways that game can help you in life. And I get asked this question a lot, Todd, does game carry over to life? Does it help you? And I've always given kind of the typical answers. Yeah, well, learning sales will help you because you're always selling. Being more persuasive and more charismatic helps you across the board. Being good in all your relationships is useful, not just in your male to female relationships. And those are all really obvious. But when I really think about it, and I've been doing a lot of deep thinking lately about, life and myself and the world and those kind of things. When I really think about it, maybe the single biggest thing that I've gotten out of game was none of that. Probably the single biggest thing I got out of game was how I move through the world, how I think about the world, and how I think about myself. Because you see, when I was in my sort of adolescent years, which I think are a very formative time for a lot of us, I was trying really, really hard to fit in and really, really hard to be popular. Every single day, I would comb my hair to try and be popular. I would try and get the most fashionable haircut, try and wear the right clothes. I would try and sit at the right lunch table. I would try and say the right things. And that one in particular is a very, very important one because oftentimes I would be saying something to try and agree with someone just to be agreeable because I like that person, or to try and fit in and not rock the boat or something like that. And I would censor myself from saying the things I truly believed. And occasionally I fortunately didn't do this too much. I know a lot of people did, but even I did sometimes. I would occasionally even say things or agree with things I didn't believe. That very attempt to be popular by fitting in usually doesn't work. It certainly didn't work for me. Trying to fit in and agree with people in middle school and high school only made me less popular. It made me more needy. It made me more obvious. It made me come off as fake. It made me less charismatic, less genuine, all those kind of things. The most important thing, though, was that every single time I censored myself, every single time I knew something and didn't say it, or every single time I kind of agreed or was wishy-washy or didn't uphold my own beliefs, I subtly undermined my own self-esteem. I was actually hurting my own self-perception, right? I was putting other people as more important than me, putting other people as more important than my beliefs, other people as more important than the truth. And those are all very dangerous things to do and very bad ideas for your self-esteem and also for moving through the world in sort of a sane and rational way. I was a pretty good soccer player in high school. I went on to play in college, went on to play a little bit semi-pro. So I was decent in high school for sure. I was a standout. But there were certain games I played really well in and certain games I didn't play so well in. And in general, the games I tended to play the worst in were the games where there were a crowd of people whose opinions I cared about. Because when that was the case, I would be in my head. Instead of trying to play the game to win, I would be playing the game to look good, or playing the game to not get yelled at by the coach. Playing the game, I'd be literally worrying how my shorts and my socks looked rather than where should I be on the field at certain times, which is awful, awful, awful thing to be doing when you're playing a sport. It's totally awful. It's a disservice to your team and it's a disservice to yourself. But such was the mentality in middle school, high school. And then in college, I learned game, and that changed everything for me because in game, you're fundamentally trusting yourself more than somebody else's opinion, right? You have to. Right? If you're walking up to someone and offering value, you have to go in and say, you know what, if they appreciate that value, great. If they don't appreciate that value, that's not because I did something wrong. I'm still offering value. That's just their decision. That's just their loss. And if you do game trying to care about what everybody thinks all the time and trying to never get a rejection, you will drive yourself insane. But if you do game trying to just do your best and be truest to yourself, that's when you're actually going to start getting results. And ironically, that's when things are going to work out the best for you. But another beautiful thing happens in game, which is you deal with social pressure. You deal with groups that aren't necessarily immediately warm to you and you have to warm them up. You deal with shit tests, you deal with adversity, you deal with rejections. All these different things make you much stronger. There's a lot of shows on TV, a lot of comedy shows that are based on situational awkwardness that I used to find very, very funny in middle school and high school. Now, once I've learned game, I actually find them not at all funny because I don't relate. This situation that's supposed to be super awkward and super mortifying for someone, I've had worse than that 50 times over in game. How is that awkward? How is that how is that a big deal? And I just kind of let it wash off my shoulders. And that's how it's become in a lot of areas of life. And because of that, because I'm not terrified of bad reaction, because I'm not terrified of having to stand up for my position under stress, under fire, I've actually begun to stand up and say what I believe a lot more. I've been willing to actually engage in an argument with people much more readily. I've been willing to say something I believe is true, even if, certain people are going to like it and certain people aren't, because I believe it's true and I believe it's right. And that's my fundamental, moral belief, and also where my self-esteem comes from is truly being myself and expressing myself. I think if you're holding yourself back or you're not being yourself in order to impress others or please others, you are gradually diminishing your self-esteem every single time. And worse yet, A, it doesn't work, and B, it puts you in a terrible position, because as soon as you start bending over backwards to please someone and they notice it, they're just going to ask you to bend over backwards more and more and more and keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and that leads to hell. You do not want to be in that situation. One of the biggest things, again, to reiterate, that I've learned from game, yes, I learned to be better in sales and persuasion and be more socially charismatic and quicker on my feet and all these skills, and the skills are great. But maybe the biggest thing I've learned in game for making me happy, for increasing my self-esteem, for helping me walk through life with a clarity in my head and getting the best performance out of myself moment on moment instead of being constantly caught up in second guessing, has been this tolerance to social pressure. And it's kind of funny because I always tell people in learning game that, I say, I'm just like you. I have no superpower. Anything you can do, anything I can do, you can do, right? And that's kind of true, except the one superpower I have, and I say this too sometimes, is that I have a higher tolerance to social pressure than you do. That's my superpower. That's the one thing I have in game that you don't. But the good news is you can get it too. You just have to go through the fire a little bit. You just have to put yourself out there. You have to stand up for yourself, be willing to take some rejections, be willing to stand by yourself, be willing to trust yourself, be willing to just realize you're offering value regardless of trying to, pander to everybody else, and regardless of whether your value is well received every single time. All right? And the funny thing, ironically, is not only is this good for your self-esteem, it's also good game. It also makes you more charismatic. It also works in life because people appreciate leaders. People appreciate people who can stand up for themselves, and people respect that because they know how easy it would be to give in. They've seen it their whole lives. Most people do it. Most people give in. Most people are pushovers. Most people are easy to get to back down from their beliefs. When you don't do that, you will get people's respect. They won't always agree with you. They're not always going to like you, but they will respect you. And maybe more importantly, you will respect yourself. And that fundamentally is the single biggest thing I got from game, besides all the girls, all the skills, which have all been amazing, trust me. But the biggest thing was the way I look at myself and the fact that I know I stepped up and I didn't make excuses.